Hi, I'm Gordon Young from the Institute of Applied Psychology. I'm the curator and one of the trainers of the Diploma of Clinical Hypnosis and Strategic Psychotherapy. The national accreditation for that course is 11271 NAT. So I want to answer some questions that come up regularly when people are exploring this option. And the first basically piece is what makes the Institute of Applied Psychology distinctive. It's an important thing to establish. So it starts off with, what do you want? What are you looking for? Because that's the most important question to ask. Will any organization, any school be able to deliver you what you're looking for? So are you looking to create a life on your own terms, where you have time allocated to family, etc., where you actually earn an income that's solid, like a full-time income, but only work part-time? Do you want to forge a rewarding career where you actually make a difference in people's lives? If you do, then this course could be for you. So how are you going to get this? Well, the first thing I'd say is you've got to get good training. Many people do hypnosis training, but they never actually become a hypnotherapist. And that's, in many cases, from what I understand, is because they just don't think they can do the work, because the training didn't really meet their expectations. So you need good training. You also need an advanced, proven method of therapy. Hypnosis by itself is actually not a therapy. Hypnosis is a vehicle for therapy. And you've got to have support post-graduation. So ongoing, when you're actually out there, can you get support from the school? So there's a really big difference between getting qualified as a clinical hypnotherapist and becoming a successful hypnotherapist. Let me explain. Not all hypnosis is the same. This is a starting point. Now, if you don't already know that there are different types of hypnosis, this is really important for you to know. There's basically three types. One is called traditional or authoritative or authoritarian hypnosis. One is Ericksonian or permissive hypnosis. And then there's neo-Ericksonian hypnosis, which is the stuff that we teach, which is post-Erickson. So what do these different models look like? Traditional or authoritarian hypnosis is typically a scripted approach, and it's very much about hypnotizing the person, putting them into a trance state, and then basically just telling them what to do or telling them to stop doing something. You don't need a lot of counseling skills or psychotherapy understanding, because you're just going to tell the person what to do. This is typically a scripted approach, and so it's actually relatively easy to learn because you're just reading scripts to people. And you can keep downloading scripts at a relatively nominal cost from the internet. Most people's concept of the swinging watch and the cape and all the rest of it is very much traditional or authoritarian hypnosis. This was my very first training. I moved away from it quite some time ago. There are other forms of hypnosis that again fall within the traditional area, where it's more like guided meditation or mindfulness, that type of thing where you're putting people in a calm blue ocean in a beautiful forest, mostly focusing on relaxation. Then there's the Ericksonian, or sometimes referred to as solution-oriented or permissive hypnosis. This is the more modern form. This is never about telling people what to do, but inviting them to consider different options that they haven't maybe entertained before. As I said before, hypnosis is not therapy by itself. So you hear of hypnotherapy, that's actually a slightly misleading statement. Hypnosis, getting the person into a trance state, is a vehicle for you to deliver some sort of psychotherapy, some sort of approach. We don't really know why it is that when the person's in a trance state, they're more receptive to ideas, but it's been long established that that is the case. So traditional hypnosis is very much more linked to Freudian types of therapy, which in many cases these days has largely been debunked. Ericksonian or permissive hypnosis is very much more linked to solution focus or solution oriented approaches. Where are you now and where do you want to go? What kind of future can we create? Traditional hypnosis typically is more about what has been. More modern forms are very much more about where do you want to go? And the strategic approach includes the most recent types of therapies, including cognitive behavioral therapy and metacognition. So traditional forms are very much one size fits all. They have scripts. As I said, it's easy to learn because you're just reading a script. But by definition, a script has an inbuilt failure rate. If the script and the client really gel together, you're going to get a good result. But increasingly, reading a script to someone in your therapeutic session does not speak to your expertise. Nobody respects someone who's just going to read a script to you. So increasingly, with a more discerning audience, a more discerning public, the script readers are getting it's getting harder and harder for them to earn a living. It didn't used to happen probably before COVID, but since COVID, I've had many clients who've said to me, you're not going to read a script to me, are you? I went to someone like that, I could hear they were reading something, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Why am I paying someone $150 an hour to read something off the internet? I can do that myself. They can download the same recordings. So you don't have that much of a future if you're learning a scripted approach, in my view. It's also very much Freudian concepts, the idea of labeling behavior and giving you that Peter Pan syndrome or little man syndrome or something else. But so much of that Freudian stuff has really been debunked over the last few years. The other thing I'd say is a lot of traditional stuff is focusing very much on just calming the overall system down. If you're stressed, let's read your script that puts you in a beautiful forest and makes you feel relaxed and comfortable. It's very pleasant. However, you can't really expect a long-term result out of that. Why? Because making me feel calm isn't the antidote to anxiety. You have to do a bit more than that. More modern approaches tend to be more tailored to the specific individual. So you respond to the specific issues that the client has. One thing I'd say to you, especially around things like anything anxiety related, is that if your hypnosis doesn't address the client's risk assessment, it is doomed to failure. So what do I mean by that? If someone's anxious, by definition, they're seeing threat and risk where other people are not. You can't get rid of that by just telling them to calm down and get them to imagine themselves in a calm place. What you need to do is question and challenge how they're assessing risk. There's a distinction between what is probably going to happen and what is possible. All anxiety is actually a response to your own imagination. I know that sounds a strange thing to say if you haven't heard anything like it before, but ultimately, every time you're anxious, you're going into the future and imagining a catastrophe of some kind. By definition, that's a fabrication. You're never really anxious about the real world around you. You're anxious about what you think might happen in the future, even if it's the very near future, like the next few minutes. Then that should bring up another question. If you're imagining things, how realistic are your concerns? How do you determine if you should worry about something or not? Well, if you tend to catastrophize, which is a really common issue when it comes to anxiety, you're thinking about worst case scenarios. But in most of the research that's out there, roughly 90% of the time, what you imagine has zero chance of happening pretty much. So you're really just wasting your time. You're giving yourself grief over something that is very, very, very unlikely to happen. So you need to change that pattern. Putting people in a calm blue ocean doesn't do that. You need to help them reassess the way they see risk so that they only worry about things that are likely to happen and then take some sort of contingency, some sort of action to mitigate the concern. The other thing you need is some sort of really solid framework so you can learn the psychotherapy part really quickly. And we've developed something. We've had 4 university professors look at this, all of them teaching within psychology courses, and they've all agreed that this is solid. So it's all evidence-based as well, and it's easy to learn. So this is something we call the Gordian pillars. There are a number of variations on this, but this is the fundamental element. So every single problem has these 5 elements. And if you get stuck with not knowing what to do as a novice hypnotherapist, you just hit 1 or 2 of these in the first session and you'll be on track. So the foundation stone to every single problem is that something called an external locus of control. That's not my term, it's the psychological term. And that is where the client feels like circumstances or the actions of other people are determining how they feel. So their emotional state is determined by other people or circumstances around them. We have to give them back control. We have to give them back methods of wrestling back control of their own internal world. You don't get to control anything outside of you, but you absolutely get to control what you listen to internally. And we've got to teach people that skill. You know, we have somewhere between 5,000 and 12,000 thoughts a day. Not all of them are useful. The fact that you have negative or ridiculous thoughts isn't the issue. The issue is when you start to listen to them too much. So the key here is teaching clients how to not listen to thoughts or feelings that don't serve them. Then we have GICA. G stands for global thinking. There's a lack of process here. They don't really know how they're being anxious. They consider anxiety something that just comes and hits them. But you generate anxiety from within with your own thoughts and feelings, your own holding of tension, your own breathing pattern. You also typically tell yourself big statements that can't be qualified, like, I'm an anxious person, or I'm not good enough, or I have an addictive personality. None of these things are true. They're massive oversimplifications of all that you are, but you diminish yourself down to the problem. The I stands for internal orientation. You have to be in your own head and in your own thoughts and in your own feelings to have a psychological issue. You cannot be externally focused. You can't be out here in the real world and struggle with anxiety, depression, or anything else, pretty much. It's really hard to get caught up in your own thoughts and feelings when you're actually externally focused. So we've got to get the person to spend more time in the real world. The C of GICA is under compartmentalization, excessive rumination, emotional thinking, magical thinking at times. This is where you don't have the ability to park thoughts or feelings that don't serve you. So we need to build the skill of being able to hear a thought or experience a feeling, step back from it, and just ask yourself a couple of key questions. Is this thought or this feeling valid? And it might be valid. Someone's really wronged you. But the second question you ask yourself is this useful? And often the answer to that is no, this is not useful. I need to do something else. So we need to teach the client how to be able to step away from their own thoughts and feelings. And the A of GICA is low tolerance for ambiguity. All that really means is that you don't handle uncertainty very well. In fact, it's only when things are uncertain that you can be anxious about it. When you know what's going to happen, it's pretty hard to be anxious because you can't catastrophize it. You know exactly what's going to happen. So wherever you're more skilled, more experienced, you can handle uncertainty better because you've got a better track record of handling those situations. But where you're more of a novice, where you don't feel you're particularly capable, then you will struggle with uncertainty because typically we assume, and this is a distortion we run, that if I don't know what's going to happen, it's going to be bad. And that's not necessarily the case. That implies that what you know is going to happen is going to be good, and that's not the case either. So this fundamental 5 is true for virtually every condition that's likely to come through a hypnotherapist door. There are other complications for abnormal psychology, but for most things that are phobias, anything anxiety-driven, trauma, depression, OCD, any of these sorts of things, this is true for every one of them. And so you've got this very unique structure that you can tackle, and there are obviously whole ways of dealing with these things. That is true for everyone. And then there's the individual elements like particular beliefs they might be running, particular fears they might be running that you would also tackle. But this is the core of what you're going to do. You know that before you even meet them. This is a significant safety net. You can go into a session pretty confident you can do some decent work. Even if you get caught up in the story, even if you kind of get lost, you just come back to your default position. Dr. Irving Kirsch out of the Harvard School of Medicine did a massive meta-analysis on hypnosis that was linked to cognitive behavioral therapy, and which is in many ways what we're doing in this course. And it indicated that if you combine hypnosis with cognitive behavioral therapy, you could improve your results on normal cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, by up to 70%. Now, that's a huge improvement over CBT when there's no hypnosis component. So CBT does really well when you add an unconscious or trance-like element to the delivery. And that's effectively what we're doing. So this speaks to my confidence that if you train with us, you're going to get the most up-to-date, the best efficacy, the best results that are possible with hypnosis. And this is part of the evidence for that. What I would also say is a qualification does not secure a career. Some people just need to get, they just think, I just need the qualification so I can get in. Well, that would make sense if the qualification automatically spoke to capacity, and it doesn't always. You can get a qualification easier somewhere else than with me. But because it's easier, it's shorter, less demanding. When you get out there, you'll have problems. So I don't know about you, but this is what I was like when I first started. My greatest fear would be I'd sit with someone, very vulnerable. They pour their heart out to me. They tell me how all these things have gone wrong for them in their life. And then I would sit there thinking, I have no idea what to do with this. That was my greatest fear. And I spent $250,000 training around the world to the point where I no longer thought that was a possibility, where I just knew there's no way I'd be stuck because I knew enough. And that combination of training plus 25 years of clinical experience is what I'm giving you in this training. So I don't want you to ever sit there thinking, oh my God, I don't know what to do. That is the worst. So learn this model well, and you'll never have that. It just won't come up. The key here is being effective. As I said before, you get a qualification, but if you don't get great results, nobody comes back. So many hypnotherapists tell me at best they see someone once. You should be seeing someone 4 to 6 times and doing really thorough work. A lot of the time they don't come back because they don't think it was worth it. The key is always, what value are you delivering? And if you're not delivering value, people don't come back to spend more money. So you get a career by being effective. And then when you're effective, people refer you to others. After you've got to a certain critical mass of clients, you want about 50% or more of your clients to be purely referral. You didn't have to spend money advertising or marketing. They just come because you helped a friend of theirs 2 years ago. You don't get that when you're not that great. You need to be exceptional. We're going to say exceptional is a choice. So what makes us unique? We do 16 days of interactive training. The minimum HCA standard is 12 days. We do 16. We think you need more than 12. The government accreditation piece. Graduates from around Australia and the world, having government accreditation gives you so much more credibility. It's welcomed in more places around the world. We have graduates in Europe, in America, in the UK, in parts of Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and our accreditation is accepted by all of them. It's the most advanced form of hypnosis in Australia, without a doubt. You also get credits towards the Diploma of Counselling. There are 4 counselling units in the training. And technically, you could also do the hypnosis in the counseling. So you can actually get something like 8 units towards a counseling diploma if you want to add that to your qualifications. You get access to the professional associations and the insurances that you need to practice. This is the highest qualification in the land. And also we offer what I think is by far the best postgraduate support in the field. So you also need to know who the trainer is. Their foundation is your foundation. I'm 2 degrees of separation from the great Milton Erickson. Milton Erickson is one of the giants of the psychotherapeutic field altogether. I was trained by his direct students. He passed away in 1980. I trained with his direct students. I am 2 degrees of separation from Milton Erickson. That would make you 3 degrees of separation from Milton Erickson. I'm the only Australian trainer to be accepted into the Milton Erickson Foundation in Phoenix, Arizona. In part, that's because you need a master's degree just to study there. I'm a published author in the field. I've also spent the last 3 years as the president of the peak body of hypnotherapy, the Hypnotherapy Council of Australia. And I've got over 20 years of experience in the field. I was also part of the 100 Leaders program, where they went to different professions, they found who they deemed to be the leader, and they interviewed them about leadership. In this field, I was the one they chose. The other thing is that in 2024, there were new education standards set up by the Hypnotherapy Council of Australia. I'm the one who wrote those standards. So the field asked me to increase the standard. We increased it to 1,000 hours with 12 days face-to-face. Some schools complied, others did not. So you want a school that has a HCA badge, a school provider badge. I'm very familiar with the minimum standard because, as I said, I wrote it, but I didn't write it to meet what we were doing. I wrote it to meet what we thought we could get through. One of the big issues that I now see is that many schools, the people who are teaching hypnotherapy have no education qualifications. They aren't qualified as a teacher. They don't have a training and assessment qualification. That is still something to be resolved in the field. So they might be okay as a hypnotherapist, but they don't necessarily know how to teach something. And that's something, again, look into your trainer. So we're not right for you if you want the quickest, cheapest course and you want to hope for the best. We're not the quickest, we're not the cheapest. We never will be. We can't deliver what we do and be the quickest and the cheapest. If you just want to do the bare minimum, the very bare minimum to get through your qualification, please don't come. Right? Our school is attached to your qualification. So if you're ordinary, then we're ordinary. And we don't want that. This is my field. At some point, I'll have to welcome you as a colleague. And I don't want to regret giving you a qualification because you did the bare minimum. Yeah, we don't need more ordinary therapists in the field. We got plenty now. If you want to learn past life regression, things like that, we're not going to teach you that stuff. It's very high risk because there's not a lot of evidence to support it. And there's such a movement towards evidence-based interventions. So if you want to do that as a bit of a hobby or play around with it with colleagues on the weekend, that's a different thing. But if you want to charge people for this sort of thing and take people into a past that is of their own, who knows whether it's true or not, there are so many potential problems that can come out of that. And if you don't really want to know how the mind works, you just want to read a script because you want that to be easier, then again, we're not right for you. That's not what we do. If you don't want ongoing support, you just want to do your own thing, and if you just got your script and you probably don't need it, then again, we're not right for you. We are right for you if you want to make a difference in this world. If you want to make a difference in people's lives, then we're right for you. If you want to create your life as you choose for the next decade or more, then I think we're right for you. If you want a simple, reliable process to follow, but not scripted, then again, I think we are right for you. If you want to be responsible, and being a therapist requires you to be responsible. You're dealing with people who are very vulnerable. You've got to be very careful what you say and what you don't say. You need to help people, not make this situation worse. And poorly qualified, poorly trained people often make things worse. And if you want to learn things properly and that you say no to mediocrity, then we want you with us. So how do you find out more? Do your research across the board on the online stuff. Then at some point, you'll have questions that you'll need to ask people. Call every school you're considering. Talk to them, ask them the same questions. And then make sure you call us. Before you make a decision, call us and find out what we can do. You might be able to, depending on when you contact us, you might be able to sit in a little bit of the course. You can sit in for an hour or two and just get a vibe of how this all operates. That'll at no cost to you. There's different ways we can introduce you to what we do, but we can't do that if we don't know who you are. So speak to a course advisor, and there's the number. It's a 1-300 number. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that has at least opened the door to maybe you doing a bit more research. But the key is make your own decision, but please make the decision informed, because it's such a shame. I hear of it so often. We have to retrain people regularly. They've already spent $5,000, they've spent $8,000, and at the end of the course, they don't really feel like they can do the work. And then they have to come and spend the money with us as well. And that just becomes a really expensive mistake that they've trained twice. So from the outset, make a decent decision. Look at the Google reviews of every school. We have something like 400 Google reviews. Read them. Click on the person who did the review. Where are they? Do they have their own practice? Like, what's happening here? Really do your research and then make a decision and talk to us. So hopefully that's helpful, and maybe we'll see you in a course soon. Thanks for your attention.